Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So right now we have been seeing a lot of Apocalypse videos being posted recently showcasing him, and so we can extrapolate a lot of information based on everything we have seen and kind of further gauge how good or bad of a champion he is going to be. And obviously anything in this video is still going to be my personal opinion. It's not a rule of law, it's just the way my mind works and what I currently think. So the first thing, the elephant in the room, the numbers do look better than initially they did from the deep dive video. That is for sure granted. However, the numbers are not great. And let me explain this at all. Well, first and foremost, you are looking at Apocalypse as a rank 3 6-star champion in most of the showcase videos on Suicide Masteries with a full synergy team. And that is a very specific situation, very specific conditions, which will quite frankly be impossible to meet in majority of the situations. You cannot often dedicate many champion slots to your champions, period. That is a reason why no matter how good Ghost can be, so sometimes tricky to use her. That is a reason why Domino is getting used less and less, because each champion slot is more and more valuable. And now sacrificing a champion slot for synergy, even if that would be just, let's say, that cable synergy which lets him start ramp up, is still a quite significant sacrifice. Second thing that we also need to kind of like pay attention to is also practicality of how many nodes he counters and how many places we are going to be able to use him, which I'm going to showcase my point slightly later in the video. But the numbers themselves, again, with a full synergy team, we saw rank 3 6-star Apocalypse take 120 hits to take down a Realm of Legends opponent. So considering that you do use full synergy team, and that is extremely important for him because he gains extra attack based on how many mutants you have on your team, and plus obviously you do want to have access to that cable synergy or Mr. Sinister one, which lets you start the fight the quest with fully ramped up champion basically. And also what we saw in most of the showcase videos is the Mr. Sinister synergy, where he gives mutant champions either 25% passive power rate, 25% armor rating, or 25% fury. So that is another kind of like effective bonus that has been kind of like pumped into Apocalypse. And 120 hits to take down Realm of Legends opponent that he does not have class advantage on is not great. It's not insane crazy damage or anything of the sort. As a good comparison, I just uploaded a 5-star rank 5, so significantly weaker Taskmaster video with a full synergy team, clearing Realm Legends opponents in like 80 hits, clearing Realm Legends Wolverine in 65 hits. So Taskmaster, for instance, can easily outdamage that, and being a rank lower, for instance. So the numbers aren't bad, but the numbers aren't insane, no matter how pumped up it can be made to look, with either boost synergies, ton of synergies, and in kind of like perfect conditions. But the numbers are good enough for him to be worth talking again in the aspect of attacking and using him offensively, because previously, after watching deep dive video, the impression was that you're gonna get him, you're gonna put him on defense or use him for synergy, and that's going to be the end of it. Now that we have seen the numbers, and I repeat that I don't personally consider them too great, we can actually look at how great, how useful that is going to be. And first thing that we need to note is that you do need to use total of 6 power bars in order to ramp him up without any sort of power gain effect. He's not a Mystic champion, he doesn't steal power, he doesn't trigger Mystic Dispersions, nothing. So you do need to build up to level 1, drop that, level 2, drop that, level 3, drop that, and that is if he is maxed out, kind of like if he is ramped up. That means you either have that cable, Mr. Sinister, or Kang synergy, or whichever one. But in a best case scenario, you need to drop 6 bars worth of power in order to ramp him up, and that is significantly longer than you typically will want to do in any sort of average quest fight. So you will not want to use him for uncollected questing, probably not really Cavalier questing either, and he will realistically kind of end up being with quote-unquote good damage output relatively only in longer fights like Act 7, maybe top end of Act 6, some other piece of content. So that is important to know. Second thing is that he's extremely reliant on being able to access all of his special attacks. So for instance, nodes like Power Struggle, which is in 615 global, will completely ruin him, as Static Blast. If opponent launches a special attack, you lose half of your power, and Plagued Mind and things like that. So there will be a lot of obstacles into using him generically in very, very common nodes. But obviously there will be situations where you can use him. However, the fact itself that you need to build up to level 1, 2, and 3 does not make it extremely user-friendly. So that, again, kind of like puts him out of the mind of being like a casual questing ramp-up champion. Also, creating a horseman, which I'm going to talk about a bit later on, even if you synergized off in pretty much all of the examples which we saw required you to use a revive, kind of like go into the fight, quit out, revive him up, and then you can make horseman. Or it requires your ability to finish out that fight, which again could be potentially quite limited. And what do I mean? Why am I being so harsh? So I'm going to drop into a random 6.4 quest. Let's drop in 6.43, which is a very random quest. We're going to ignore the fact that the boss is Darkhawk, and you will want to have specific counter for Darkhawk, which certainly will not be Apocalypse, or probably, well, Magneto now can be a counter for that. So, but it certainly won't be Apocalypse. So let's start from the bottom up. Right, so the first lane here is Stun Immunity and Spite. Don't want to use that at all, right? Because you do want to be able to land your heavy attacks kind of like guaranteed, and when you need to do so in order to refresh your debuffs. Spite is going to make it obviously trickier to play as well. In addition, obviously, then you'll have to deal with all of the extra abilities like Spider-Gwen, it's a Wage, or Ragnarok is power gain. Then you have this Glancing Ant-Man, which again requires specific solutions. So you can use potentially him in some of the fights there, but he definitely wouldn't be top 10 option to bring in my head. Then we're going to move on to the next fight, which starts with Short Burst Lockdown. Goes in with Poison, so he has no poison immunity, that automatically him kind of like disqualifies from being used here. Right, and the poison is for every fight, so yeah, you can't use Apocalypse, and you cannot also ramp up any champion as a horseman unless you're willing to immediately drop a revive. Now we're going to take a look at the next path. It's Stunning Reflection and Critical Resistance. Now he will likely have very interesting interaction with Stunning Reflection that would effectively, I believe, make basically opponent stun immune, because you cannot get stunned whilst they're attacking, but then you would be blocking. No, still you have to deal with Stunning Reflection, and again, he definitely will not be the best option for that. However, if you do manage to get to Poison, then you can disable it, I believe, for 8 seconds. But again, you do need to play around it carefully, plus you do need to deal with Guillotine 2099 miss mechanics, then you need to deal with the evade mechanics of Ultron and whatever else you have to deal with further on. So again, this is a lane where realistically you would not consider him as like a top 10 option unless you absolutely want to force through into creating somebody as a horseman. Moving on to the next lane, we have Clapback and Feats of Power. Now with Clapback, since you do inflict bleed and poison, you can become bleed immune after a while, but you will still take some damage back in every single fight. Well, in the first fight until you become immune, but in every fight when you inflict opponent with poison, you can take that poison back because you're not poison immune, so you will be able to get through a fight or two due to Clapback, possibly 3, but he would likely die out quite quickly in here as well. Not to mention that individual champions here as well has like poison active and plenty of other tricky notes. So again, Apocalypse likely is not going to be the way to go in many of these fights. Moving on up, we have Energize and Special Bias, basically kind of like opponent's going to use level 1, level 2, and level 3 with increased power gain. So you do need power control here. So you do not want or can use Apocalypse. And then we have the quote-unquote easy lane, which has only True Strike and Aggression Cruelty, which can be done largely with any champion, and fair enough. You can bring in Apocalypse here, have fun. So that is what I mean, that it's not going to be as easy as everybody thinks to accommodate. It's very important for people to keep in mind, or at least realistically not get their hopes up too high to expect this to be new Ghost, new Quake, or whatever as a champion itself. It will certainly have its uses, but they're not gonna come too frequently, I believe, and you're gonna kind of have to pick your battles and pick your teams, and that is important to understand. Now, I do think because of the improved outlook on his damage, he will have his uses here and there. I do think he's going to be decent for variant 2 as extra large champion. Helpful that are decently big. You might have time to ramp him up as a rank 4 or 5-star champion or something, and he could put in some decent work there. And I do think he will have some piece of content where he's going to be great. Do think in Alliance Quest, under specific lanes, he might potentially make your life easier. He could be a champion that goes to Alliance Quest, because you can make an already good champion like a horseman and then basically use that horseman for most of the fight, and he does have that regen for every fight that he slumbers. So he could be an Alliance Quest option. Do I think he's going to be Alliance or option? Very, very, very rarely for some very big specialty fights where there are very tricky opponents. But at large, I think that Alliance or map is not friendly for Apocalypse at all, in terms that you have these power suppression nodes, in terms that you have these stunning reflection or whatever nodes, then you have shifting immunities, and just in general plenty of nodes, or many different nodes, where Apocalypse would not really be able to function. And not to mention, if you want to have Apocalypse ramped up, which is kind of like important for most part, then you need to sacrifice a team slot for, let's say, Cable, and then that already kind of like shortens your reach as an attacker. Now, I do think we're going to see him now and then in Alliance, or I do not think he's going to be like a staple attacker. As far as it goes for any kind of casual questing, no, hell no, his ramp up is far too long. So that leaves us with Act 6, variant content, Labyrinth, and Abyss of Legends. I do think he might play a role in Abyss and Labyrinth, either by making some specific champions horsemen or as himself once he's fully ramped up. Because in these extremely long fights, where you actually will definitely get to 6 bars of power and many more, his damage output can become decent with a damage over time tick, where you can just slow play in Abyss, for instance, save your hits, just kind of like drop heavy attacks as seldom as possible and let the damage over time effect do the work. So in theory, he does sound like a potential Abyss option for some of the fights. But when you go in Abyss, again, keep in mind that you do need to deal with many different specific nodes, and he might not be suitable for many different matchups there as well. For instance, you definitely will not want to bring him in, I know, against Mephisto, against Venom the Duck, against plenty of different champions. So he could be usable in Abyss in certain matchups, certain situations, but he will not be the new A-gun for Abyss. Labyrinth of Legends, fair enough, but we have a ton of champions who can do that. And then again, in Act 6, I don't think he's going to be close to top 10 most frequently used champion, but you will be able to force stuff through with him if you're willing to revive and stuff like that. And variant content. Variant 1, we have Mutant and Skill Chapter 1, which can be done with vast majority of the champions, because that is by far the easiest chapter. So he will not realistically have a significant mark in your ability to clear Variant 1. Variant 2 is extra large champions. Yes, I do believe he's going to be quite good for Variant 2. Variant 3 is Tech variant, but I also think he's going to be decently good for Variant 3, because he obviously will shine in longer fights, and that attack reduction will just kind of let you complete the cycle in full, and then you'll still be able to use his utility and abilities. So I think he is possibly one of the more decent non-tech options to bring into variant 3. Variant 4 was a tricky one because we need to use each star level. I don't think he's going to do anything special there, and variant 5 you cannot use him at all. So as it is, as a champion himself, I do expect him to see some use, but definitely not as major applications as like your top go-to champions typically, like your Voids, your Captain America Infinity Wars, your Nick Furies, your Quakes, your Ghosts, your Corvus. No, he's not going to land in same group as a champion playability wise, in my personal opinion, and I do not expect that to happen. I might be wrong. I'd be more than happy if I'm wrong, because Apocalypse is cool as hell, but I don't see that happening with him. Now, his Horseman abilities, they do make for great cinema, for sure. And I cannot wait to make a bunch of videos myself, with Colossus, with Domino, with many different champions using that. But that's the fun aspect. And there is going to be a lot of fun aspect with his synergies, with his Horseman abilities. Whether that's going to be practical and whether it's going to be applicable, I'm not sold on that yet. Obviously, I cannot predict everything, but I do not think that having Apocalypse and making your mutants Horsemen will become your new go-to hard content questing strategies. No, I do not expect that to happen. I do not expect this synergy to be as broadly used as, I know, Nick Fury with Deadpools, or Nick Fury with Quake, or I don't know, Omega Red with Sabretooth or something like that. So overall, to sum everything up without bubbling too much, and I already have kept you guys for a while, I do think Apocalypse now looks hell of a lot better than he did a week or two ago. His numbers have made him an actual viable option. He has escaped the fate of Mole Man and Terra. Now, do I think those numbers are extraordinarily outstanding? Not really. The fight length, the build up to it, is just not quick. It's just not quick enough for him to be kind of like your ease of quest, kind of like ease of fight using champion. So he will have to be utilized in more serious content, where again he will have his drawbacks by either requiring the synergies or just not maybe being perfectly suitable for a lot of that stuff. But on the bright side, once again, yes, I do expect to see some representation of him on Alliance War Attack, possibly as a specialist, kind of like maybe like person on reserve in order to clear a fight best or something like that. And I do expect him to pop up here and there, and I am super excited to make some really cool videos with him, but at the same time I want people to slow down a bit, take a little bit of a breather. It's easy to get overhyped when you see God tier, but when every champion comes out with a God tier label, then people by now should be a bit more cautious, in my opinion. That's what I think. Overall, I think this is a good twist for Apocalypse, and I am very excited to try and get him and try and play him in content myself. But that is about it for today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you did, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. See ya!